What the Essential Sound Panel actually is, it is a series of tools for working with audio in a role-based workflow. Whether it's music, sound effects, or ambience, the Essential Sound Panel provides specific tools for that type of audio. One way of using this with the Essential Sound Panel is I can make a group selection of some clips. In this case, this is the bartender dialogue. And by clicking on dialogue, it has now assigned those clips into the dialogue group. So now I have a series of tools inside of Premiere Pro designed specifically for doing common tasks for cleaning up dialogue. Now these have simple controls here, but the important thing to note is what the Essential Sound Panel is doing is it's actually putting clip effects on each of these different clips that are the same high-end clip effects that exist over in Adobe Audition. In fact, Premiere and Audition now have all of the same core set of effects for repair, cleanup, and so on and so forth. So if you're an audio expert, you do have the ability to go into the more advanced interfaces, and I'm going to show that in a second here. But the idea is this is a shortcut. This simplifies down things like the dynamics processor, which is something that you can put points on a curve and you can do all kinds of sculpting of the audio if you know what you're doing, down to a simple slider. Here is the dynamics processor, and this is the curve that it's actually generated based on the content. There's some machine learning that's built into this to listen to the content and determine the range of compressors and expanders to add to this particular clip. The idea being, if you don't know audio, you can use the simplified controls over here for things like dialogue, music, sound effects, and there's different controls for each of these different categories of audio so that you can create these different groups. There's an EQ that's built in here that has presets. I'm still trying to find out from Adobe who named these presets and why we have one that's called Locked in the Trunk. I'm like, So the idea being I can go through and create different groups of clips, assign different settings to these clips using these simple controls, but I know that I can go back and I can use the more advanced controls at any point in the process. For the first time, Audition is actually reading Premiere Pro project files. Now, it at that point actually takes the audio and it makes a copy of the audio. It basically makes stems for you in a new folder so that Audition doesn't have to work with all the different types of media that you might have inside of Premiere. It is it wants to make sure that everything stays non-destructive. And there is a way of going from Premiere and bouncing back with a mix down directly in Premiere. We don't quite have full round tripping yet, where the changes you make in Audition just apply on the timeline in Premiere. There still is a process. When we talk to people in the industry, they still prefer to have like a stereo mix down at the bottom of the Premiere timeline and keep the stems separate up at the top. We've been really pleasantly surprised by the people that are playing around with this and using this today. The Simpsons came to us and asked if they could use this to do a 3-minute, 4-minute segment at the end of a Simpsons episode last year where Homer Simpson took live phone calls. And they got Dan Castellaneta in front of a microphone and actually had him improvise answers to phone calls at the end of the episode. They actually put a camera on Dan Castellaneta. They quickly realized that, you know, he obviously sounds like Homer Simpson. He doesn't move the way Homer Simpson moves. So what they did instead was they rigged up a keyboard with all of these different preset animations. I think the Photoshop file had like 65,000 layers in it, so that they could hit a keystroke and fire off and trigger specific animations of Homer's hand lifting this way, crossing his arms, and so on and so forth, so that it continued to feel like the hand-drawn animation. Once you've done a recording pass, whether you've brought in the audio and had the mouth matched to that, or you've recorded the audio directly in, if you want to go back and change the timing of the mouth shapes, or if you say, well, that's the wrong mouth shape for what I was saying there, I want to use something different, there's actually a track that shows up in the timeline now for doing that. We anticipated this being something that would be integrated into After Effects at some point, but because of the live functionality in it, it's taken on a life of its own. Dave Simons is actually the guy who is one of the chief engineers responsible for this. He's also the guy who was responsible for After Effects way back in the day. Now, I haven't showcased and we haven't talked too much about libraries from a video perspective because you couldn't really store video elements in libraries before. You could store stock video, you could store logos, graphic elements. They've been used a lot in tools like InDesign, tools like Illustrator and Photoshop have been utilizing libraries. If you're an After Effects artist, you can get content from a Photoshop or an Illustrator user, and it will show up right inside of a library. These libraries are shared via Creative Cloud. You can now store motion graphic templates inside of a library. What's even more exciting is you can make a library read-write for the creators and read-only for a particular group of editors. If you're working on a TV show on a regular basis, you could have one or two people that manages this library, updates the elements inside of that library as needed, and the editors will have a one-stop place to pull and drag and drop those elements for. So if there's something going on a show, you're using different stingers, you need to update them for a particular holiday or something, you want to add a little holiday-themed element to that, you can update them in one place and know that everybody will have access to them. So this is something we've been working really closely with certain ad agencies, certain places that do commercial TV production to make sure that this fits the bill for the way they want to handle branding elements moving forward. All right, that's what I have for today. Thank you, guys.